In the heart of a bustling city filled with towering skyscrapers and a constant hum of activity, 12-year-old Jackson Smith stood out not just for his age, but for his relentless pursuit of what was right. His sandy blonde hair was tousled, and his wide blue eyes sparkled with determination. While most boys his age were preoccupied with video games and sports, Jackson found solace in the pages of legal textbooks and law documentaries. He had accumulated an impressive array of knowledge, absorbing every detail about justice and fairness. Jackson's interest in law was fueled by a deep-seated sense of injustice that had been ignited when his parents, once lively and full of dreams, were involved in a car crash that changed their lives forever. The accident had left them struggling, both emotionally and financially. As he watched them grapple with the aftermath, the boy realized that he could no longer sit idly by. He felt an undeniable calling to defend them against what he perceived as an unfair situation involving insurance companies and legal battles. Determined to ensure his parents received the justice they deserved, Jackson began to prepare himself for the courtroom with the intensity of a seasoned attorney. With each passing day, he studied case law and practiced arguments in front of his mirror, honing his skills to not just understand the law, but to embody it. On that fateful day in court, as he approached the judge's imposing bench, Jackson felt a mix of anxiety and resolve. Dressed in a neat button-up shirt that hung slightly loose on his thin frame, he took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. This was more than just a trial. It was his chance to prove that age was merely a number when one possessed wisdom beyond their years and an unyielding passion for justice. The car crash that changed Jackson's family forever occurred on a rainy evening when the streets glistened under the fading light. His parents, both dedicated professionals, were returning home from a charity event, filled with hope and excitement. Suddenly, in a matter of seconds, their vibrant lives were shattered as a speeding vehicle, driven by a distracted driver, collided with their car. The impact was devastating. Jackson's mother suffered severe injuries requiring surgery, while his father sustained a concussion that left him disoriented and struggling with daily tasks. In the aftermath of the accident, the emotional and financial toll was overwhelming. Jackson, once surrounded by laughter and warmth, now navigated a household fraught with worry. His mother spent weeks in the hospital, while his father grappled with mounting medical bills and lost income due to his inability to work. The resources that once flowed freely became a source of anxiety, casting a shadow over their family dynamic. As Jackson watched his parents endure pain and uncertainty, he felt an insatiable urge to help them reclaim their lives. The insurance company's refusal to take full responsibility for the crash further compounded their distress. It wasn't just about the medical expenses. It was about accountability and justice in a system that seemed stacked against them. They faced the prospect of lengthy legal battles, and Jackson realized that no one was fighting for their rights. This gap ignited his resolve. Determined to take action, Jackson immersed himself in understanding the legal proceedings that awaited them. He pored over books about liability and insurance law, eager to learn everything he could about how to advocate for his parents. Confident he could make a difference, he envisioned himself standing up in court, not just as their son but as their voice in a relentless quest for justice. As Jackson stepped into the courtroom, the atmosphere felt heavy with anticipation and tension. The stark, polished wood of the benches contrasted against the gray stone walls, creating an imposing environment that loomed over him. The room was filled with a motley crew of onlookers, friends and family who had come to support Jackson, along with curious strangers eager to witness the unusual case of a boy defending his parents. At the front of the room, the judge presided over the proceedings with an air of authority. Dressed in traditional black robes, he sat elevated above everyone else, his sharp gaze scanning the courtroom with a hint of skepticism. It was clear from the start that he was not easily impressed. The corners of his mouth twitched in amusement as he caught sight of Jackson, a mere child standing at the defense table. The judge had a reputation for being dismissive toward those he deemed unworthy of his time, and Jackson could feel the weight of his scrutiny. Opposite them stood the opposing counsel, a seasoned attorney clad in an expensive suit. With a confident demeanor, he exuded an air of superiority, clearly underestimating Jackson's potential. He flicked through legal documents with practiced ease, ready to demolish any arguments the young boy might present. As witnesses were called to the stand, their voices echoed in the chamber, providing testimonies that painted a picture of the accident and its aftermath. Jackson listened intently, absorbing each detail, his heart racing as he prepared to counter the defense's narrative. The energy in the room shifted as he realized that this was not just a trial, it was a test of his resolve and intellect. In this pivotal setting, Jackson steeled himself for what lay ahead. He knew he had to rise above the judge's mockery and prove that even a 12-year-old could wield justice like a seasoned lawyer. As the courtroom settled into an uneasy silence, the judge's voice broke through, dripping with skepticism. He leaned slightly forward, his eyes narrowing as he regarded Jackson with a mix of amusement and disbelief. "And who do we have here?" he asked, his tone condescending. "A young lawyer in training? How charming!" The judge's words hung in the air like a challenge, inviting laughter from the audience and reinforcing the perception that Jackson was simply out of his depth. Jackson stood at the defense table, acutely aware of the judge's dismissive gaze. He felt small amidst the towering figures of adults in suits, but he refused to let it show. The judge continued to smirk, clearly unprepared for a serious debate with someone so young. "Tell me, young man," he said mockingly, "do you even know what you're doing here? Perhaps we should play a game instead. How about a round of truth or lie?" Laughter erupted from some corners of the gallery, but Jackson ignored it, determination hardening within him. The condescension didn't escape him, it only fueled his resolve. This was not just a trial for justice. It was also about earning respect, both for himself and for his parents' plight. As witnesses were called to testify, the judge continued to cast sideways glances at Jackson, occasionally making quips about how he hoped someone would keep this kid on track. Yet amid the mockery and derision, Jackson focused on his parents' hurt and their need for vindication. He knew that the judge's underestimation would soon become a pivotal point in this case. If he could prove himself amidst such overwhelming doubt, he would not only defend his parents but also shatter preconceptions about age and capability in the courtroom. With the courtroom buzzing from the judge's earlier mockery, he leaned forward, a smirk playing at the corners of his lips. "Since we have such a young attorney on our hands," he proclaimed, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "why don't we lighten things up? Let's play a game of truth or lie." The suggestion was met with chuckles from the gallery, and Jackson felt a surge of indignation. The judge clearly intended this as a diversion, expecting that the boy would falter under pressure. Jackson stood rooted at the defense table, keenly aware of the laughter around him. The judge's tone indicated that he believed this game would unmask Jackson's inexperience while entertaining the attendees. It was a tactic designed to belittle him rather than foster any sort of serious debate. "I can ask you questions about your case," the judge continued, his eyes twinkling with condescension. "And you have to determine if what I say is true or false. Sound fair?" Internally, Jackson wrestled with a whirlwind of emotions, anger mingled with determination. He understood the stakes. This was no ordinary game, but a chance to flip the narrative on its head. If he could demonstrate his knowledge and composure in front of an audience that expected failure from someone so young, it could serve as a pivotal moment in his fight for justice. Taking a deep breath to steady himself, Jackson nodded slowly. "All right," he said firmly, meeting the judge's incredulous gaze head-on. The room fell silent in anticipation, intrigued by how this unconventional challenge would unfold. In that instant, he resolved not just to play along but to turn this mocking game into an opportunity to showcase his legal prowess and defend his parents' rights effectively. He was ready to prove that even a child could wield justice when armed with knowledge and courage. In the weeks leading up to the trial, Jackson immersed himself in the world of law with an intensity that defied his age. His small bedroom became a hub of legal study, cluttered with books that ranged from introductory law texts to detailed accounts of landmark cases. He would often stay up late, poring over pages filled with complex terminology, fiercely determined to grasp every detail that could aid him in court. His parents, initially unaware of the extent of his preparations, would occasionally peek into his room to find Jackson sprawled on the floor, surrounded by highlighters and notebooks filled with handwritten notes. Each night, he practiced arguments in front of a mirror, rehearsing both his tone and facial expressions as if he were addressing a courtroom filled with seasoned attorneys. In these moments, he sought to project not just confidence but also the deep compassion he felt for his parents' plight. To simulate real-life scenarios, he enlisted the help of a close friend who would play the role of opposing counsel during their makeshift debates in the local park. They would take turns arguing cases based on hypothetical situations, allowing Jackson to refine his ability to think on his feet and anticipate counterarguments. Each session fueled his determination and bolstered his self-assurance. Moreover, he explored online forums and watched recorded trials, studying how skilled attorneys presented their cases and interacted with judges. These experiences helped him develop strategies for questioning witnesses, crafting arguments, and understanding courtroom decorum. With each passing day, Jackson's knowledge grew sharper, and his commitment deepened. He wasn't merely preparing for a game. He was arming himself for what felt like a battle for justice, a chance to stand firm against the overwhelming odds stacked against him as a child fighting for his family. It was this dedication that ignited a fire within him as he faced the daunting challenge ahead. As the game of truth or lie commenced, the courtroom buzzed with an electric tension. Jackson stood tall at the defense table, his heart pounding in his chest but his resolve unwavering. The judge leaned back, a smirk on his face as he prepared to test the young boy's knowledge with what he believed would be easy questions. "Let's start simple," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "The accident occurred because your parents were driving recklessly. Truth or lie?" Jackson paused for only a moment, his mind racing through the information he had studied. He knew this was a pivotal moment. How he responded could redefine the atmosphere of the trial. With clarity and confidence, he replied, "That's a lie, Your Honor. The evidence clearly indicates that my parents were abiding by all traffic regulations at the time of the accident." Gasps echoed throughout the courtroom as Jackson articulated his response with such certainty and poise that even some of the spectators shifted uncomfortably in their seats, surprised by his command of legal principles. The judge's expression faltered momentarily as he realized he had underestimated Jackson yet again. "Very well," the judge said, albeit begrudgingly, as he composed himself. "Next question. The insurance company is acting in good faith by denying your claim." The tension thickened again, but Jackson was undeterred. "That is also a lie," he answered firmly. "My research shows that they have a legal duty to investigate all claims thoroughly and provide fair compensation for damages incurred." Each correct answer bolstered Jackson's confidence and enthusiasm, turning what was intended to be a mockery into an admirable performance that captivated everyone present. With each question he expertly tackled, Jackson not only challenged the judge's mockery but also began to win over supporters in the room who recognized his talent for law and justice. As murmurs of approval rippled through the audience, it became evident that Jackson's knowledge and preparation had transformed this game into an unexpected demonstration of brilliance, an early sign that he might just turn the tide in favor of his parents after all. After the initial round of questioning, Jackson knew it was time to call witnesses to the stand, a crucial step in solidifying his case. He had meticulously prepared a list of individuals whose testimonies could paint a clearer picture of the events surrounding the accident. As each witness took their place, Jackson felt a surge of confidence. He had studied their statements and knew exactly how to draw connections that even the most seasoned attorneys might overlook. The first witness, a bystander who had witnessed the crash, described the moments leading up to the incident. Jackson leaned in, listening intently as the witness recounted seeing a car speeding through a red light. With a calm demeanor, Jackson seized the opportunity to ask pointed questions. "Can you describe the behavior of my parents' vehicle just before the collision?" he inquired. The bystander confirmed that they had been driving within the speed limit and obeying all traffic signals. This testimony aligned perfectly with Jackson's strategy, highlighting his parents' adherence to the law. Each subsequent witness added layers to Jackson's case. He skillfully navigated through their testimonies, drawing connections between their accounts and the evidence he had gathered. When an expert on traffic patterns testified about how distractions could lead to accidents, Jackson immediately interjected with a follow-up question. Given your expertise, would you agree that the fault lies with the distracted driver rather than compliant motorists? The expert nodded, further validating Jackson's argument. As the witnesses spoke, it became increasingly clear that Jackson was not just defending his parents. He was constructing a compelling narrative that illuminated their innocence while placing blame squarely on the distracted driver. The judge and audience were visibly engaged, shifting their perceptions as they began to recognize Jackson's brilliance. With each testimony, Jackson's confidence grew, transforming what began as an uphill battle into a powerful demonstration of his capability. It was evident that he was not just a child trying to defend his family. He was emerging as a formidable advocate for justice. As the game of truth or lie progressed, a palpable tension filled the courtroom. Jackson could sense that both the judge and the opposing attorney were beginning to treat him with more seriousness than his age suggested. It was during this pivotal moment that he seized the opportunity to showcase his brilliance. The judge leaned forward, attempting to catch Jackson off guard with a challenging question. "Let's see if you can handle this one, young man," he said, smirking. "Truth or lie, the accident was caused solely by the negligence of your parents." Jackson took a deep breath, heart racing yet focused. "That is a lie, Your Honor," he stated confidently, pausing for effect as he prepared to present evidence that would leave everyone speechless. "In fact, I have a report here from the police department that outlines the evidence from the scene." He pulled out a copy of the accident report he had obtained earlier, holding it up for all to see. "The driver who hit my parents was using their phone at the time of the crash. This was confirmed by witnesses and documented in this official report." A murmur ran through the courtroom as Jackson continued to read from the report, highlighting key points regarding distracted driving and how it contributed significantly to the accident. The atmosphere shifted dramatically. There were no longer chuckles or dismissive glances aimed at him, only silence as fellow spectators began to grasp his depth of understanding. Even the opposing attorney struggled for words, unable to counteract such well-presented evidence. The judge's expression changed too. Gone was the smugness from earlier. He adjusted his glasses and leaned back in his chair, clearly taken aback by Jackson's ability to not only present facts but also interpret them effectively in support of his argument. In that moment, it became evident, Jackson had not just defended his parents, he had propelled himself into an unexpected spotlight as a competent advocate for justice, a turning point that left both his critics and allies in awe of what they had just witnessed. As the trial unfolded, Jackson's emotional journey became increasingly palpable. Each time he stood before the judge or presented evidence, he felt the weight of his parents' struggles pressing down on him like a heavy cloak. The sight of his mother in pain, her spirit dulled by injury and uncertainty, fueled a fierce determination within him. He could hear her voice echoing in his mind, the countless times she encouraged him to stand up for what was right, to never back down from a challenge. Despite being only 12 years old, Jackson was acutely aware of the stakes involved. This was not just about winning a case. It was about restoring dignity to his family and ensuring that they received the justice they deserved. As he faced skepticism from the judge and the opposing attorney, who viewed him as merely a child playing lawyer, Jackson felt an intense mixture of frustration and resolve. He often recalled moments shared with his parents, family dinners filled with laughter and love, that reminded him of what he was fighting for. The mocking laughter of the courtroom reverberated in his ears, but rather than feeling disheartened, it sparked an even greater determination in Jackson. He thought of how unfairly life had treated them since the accident, and how the insurance company's refusal to take responsibility had compounded their suffering. Every time he presented evidence, or called a witness to the stand, it became a personal mission to challenge not just their case but also societal perceptions about age and capability. With each testimony that validated his parents' innocence, Jackson's confidence grew alongside his emotional investment. He transformed pain into power, channeling every ounce of love he held for his parents into compelling arguments that resonated deeply within the courtroom. In those moments, he wasn't just advocating for justice. He was forging a pathway toward healing for his family, a journey fueled by love that transcended age and experience. As the trial unfolded, the judge's initial skepticism began to unravel, slowly replaced by a dawning realization of Jackson's exceptional capabilities. Watching the young boy navigate the courtroom with the poise of someone much older, he found his own preconceived notions challenged. Jackson's articulate responses to the difficult questions posed during the truth or lie game and his adept handling of witness testimonies were increasingly impressive. In a particularly compelling moment, as Jackson presented evidence directly linking the other driver's negligence to the crash, the judge sat back in his chair, his brow furrowing in concentration. He had come into this case expecting to oversee a simple matter that would confirm his biases about youth and competence. Instead, he was faced with a rising star. The reports and testimony that Jackson laid out were meticulously organized, underpinned by facts and logic that were hard to refute. Observers in the courtroom could sense the shift in the judge's demeanor. Gone was the aura of condescension that had once characterized his interactions with Jackson. Instead, he leaned slightly forward, a glimmer of interest sparking in his eyes. Jackson's unwavering determination and heartfelt advocacy were not just palpable. They were also persuasive in a way that compelled everyone present to reconsider their earlier judgments. At one point, before calling the next witness, Jackson took a moment to look at the judge directly. "Your Honor," he said firmly but respectfully, "the truth matters here, not my age. My parents deserve justice just as much as any adult would." This statement struck a chord. The judge's expression softened slightly, evidence of internal conflict. He was beginning to acknowledge that Jackson was not merely a boy fumbling through legal jargon but rather an intelligent advocate driven by love and urgency. In that pivotal moment, it became clear, Jackson was reshaping not only the narrative of the case but also the very perceptions about youth and capability within the courtroom. The tide was turning, and both the judge and those watching had begun to realize that true brilliance can come in unexpected forms. As the trial drew to a close, Jackson stood before the courtroom for his closing argument, a mixture of nervousness and determination coursing through him. He took a deep breath, glancing at his parents, who sat anxiously in the audience. Their eyes reflected hope and vulnerability, reminding him of the stakes involved. This was more than just a legal battle. It was about their lives, their dignity, and their future. "Your Honor," Jackson began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Today we've heard from witnesses who confirmed my parents were not at fault that fateful day. We've seen evidence that clearly shows the negligence of the other driver, who chose to prioritize their phone over human lives." He paused for a moment to let his words resonate, knowing he had to connect with everyone present. "I am only 12 years old," he continued, allowing a hint of vulnerability to seep into his tone. "But I understand what it means to be a family facing hardship. My mother has been in pain since the accident, and my father has struggled not just physically but emotionally as well. They have faced too much suffering already." Jackson's heartfelt appeal hung in the air, evoking empathy from those listening. He shifted his focus back to the evidence. "The law is designed to protect us from injustice," he stated firmly. "My parents deserve justice as much as anyone else in this room. They were following the rules of the road. They were innocent victims of someone else's carelessness." As he wrapped up his argument, Jackson looked directly at the judge, his eyes wide with sincerity. "Let us not forget that justice is not just about laws and regulations. It's about humanity and compassion. Please remember this family's struggle and the truth we've uncovered today." In that moment, Jackson's words struck a chord with everyone present. His closing argument was more than just a summary of facts. It was an impassioned plea for justice grounded in love and empathy for his parents' plight, a reflection of his journey throughout the trial and an assertion that even in youth, profound understanding can lead to powerful advocacy. As the trial reached its climax, a palpable tension enveloped the courtroom. Jackson stood at the front, his heart racing as he awaited the judge's verdict. The room was silent except for the faint rustle of papers and the ticking of a clock that seemed to amplify the weight of the moment. Spectators leaned forward in their seats, a mix of hope and anxiety etched on their faces, reflecting the emotional stakes involved. Jackson's parents sat in the gallery, their expressions a blend of apprehension and pride, They had witnessed their son transform from a hesitant child into a formidable advocate for justice. The judge, who had once dismissed Jackson's capabilities, now regarded him with newfound respect. His demeanor was serious as he prepared to announce the verdict that would determine not just the outcome of the case but also the futures of Jackson's family. After careful consideration of the evidence presented, the judge began, his voice steady but firm. "It is my duty to deliver a verdict." Jackson's breath caught in his throat as he focused intently on every word. He could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on him, waiting for a decision that could change their lives forever. The judge continued, "In light of the testimonies and facts established during this trial, I find that the defendant," he paused dramatically, "is not guilty of negligence in this matter." A wave of relief washed over Jackson. It felt as if time had stopped as he processed what he had just heard. Gasps erupted throughout the courtroom, followed by murmurs of disbelief and then applause from supporters who had fervently believed in Jackson's cause. Tears glistened in his parents' eyes as they embraced each other, overwhelmed by joy and gratitude. In that moment, Jackson felt an incredible sense of accomplishment, not just for winning the case, but for having fought so hard alongside his parents against adversity. Their journey together had reached a pivotal turning point, one that not only restored their dignity but also solidified Jackson's belief in his own strength and capability as an advocate for justice. In the aftermath of the trial, reflections filled the courtroom as the attendees processed what they had just witnessed. Jackson's parents embraced him tightly, tears of joy streaming down their faces, overwhelmed by both relief and pride. They had watched their son transform into an unwavering advocate for justice, shattering any preconceived notions about youth and capability. The judge, who had once dismissed Jackson's potential based solely on his age, now regarded him with newfound respect. He pondered how his earlier mockery had clouded his judgment and led him to underestimate a boy who had proven himself to be not only knowledgeable but also profoundly empathetic. This case had opened his eyes to the possibility that wisdom and insight could manifest in unexpected forms, regardless of one's years. As Jackson's family celebrated outside the courthouse, the atmosphere was electric with excitement and newfound hope. Friends and supporters praised Jackson's bravery and intelligence, many expressing how he had inspired them to reconsider their beliefs about age and competence in law. The community rallied around him, recognizing that he was not just a young boy defending his parents. He was a beacon of resilience who had dared to challenge a flawed system. This experience ignited a fierce passion within Jackson for pursuing a career in law. He felt a growing desire to advocate for others who faced injustice, driven by the same love that had propelled him through this trial. With each congratulatory remark he received, he envisioned a future where he could help those in need navigate their own battles. In the months that followed, Jackson immersed himself in legal studies with renewed vigor, eager to learn everything he could. He began volunteering at local legal aid clinics, using his voice to support those who felt powerless. The trial had not only restored dignity to his family but had also set Jackson on a path toward becoming a formidable advocate for justice. A journey fueled by compassion and an unwavering belief that even the youngest among us can make a profound difference.